This is the Tuesday, December 4th meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission. The meeting is hereby called to order under the authority of Mass General Law 131, Section 40, Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. Notice is given that both a video and audio recording will be made of the meeting. The agent will now call the roll for attendance.
Thank you. Arthur Page.
Yep.
Kurt Turner.
Here.
Bob Garner.
Here.
Judy Keys.
Here.
Dan Shinnick.
Here.
Sam Strike.
Here.
Howard Vogel.
Here.
We have everyone present, so definitely a quorum.
All right, that brings us to our first item, which is payroll and/or vendor bills.
Yes, thank you. If I may, I request approval of the payroll. And for your review, hours. You have a sign-in sheet, please circulate that, if you could, please. Thank you.
The next item is three items, actually. It's minutes, and we'll do them one at a time like we usually do. The first minutes was sent to the committee electronically. That's the October 30th, 2018. Everybody have a chance to review the electronic version? Any questions, alterations, punctuation, spelling, anything? Do I have a motion to accept that as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Approved, thank you very much.
Next item is the November 13th, 2018, so really we're getting caught up here. Did everybody have a chance to look at that? Any corrections, alterations, questions?
There were some, all of the last one, but I assume everybody's seen.
Yes.
Yeah, there were a few corrections which I believe we made, and those
Sent out.
are- those are acceptable to everyone.
Do I hear a motion to accept the corrected one? Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay, unanimous, approved, thank you.
And then we have the March 29th, 2011.
Now, I have copies of those, since we just did those today. You wish me to distribute them?
I browsed through it, I didn't see any. Well, I mean, I didn't see any problems with it.
Oh, okay, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you needed to see it.
I wouldn't necessarily see the problem anyway, because I have not a good spell it.
Can Judy sign a
Can Judy see a copy?
We also take a look at it.
Certainly. Anybody else?
No, I'm in trouble bringing long things up.
You were probably there.
Oh, yeah.
Most likely.
Don't think I remember.
We would have to go back quite a ways.
Before you would
But I
find
probably could find the minutes for Judy's first meeting, but it would be what, in the 70s, right?
Were you on the first board? Were you on the first board?
No. That I can say.
She's not an early adopter.
But she has our undying respect and gratitude for serving the
cheers.
community for so long.
Yes.
just don't know how to get out of it.
On a cold, wet, windy night, yeah.
Yes.
You just can't step back fast enough anymore.
Yeah, I noticed the thing from the 80s in here is so much.
The same names keep cropping
It's a
up.
lot of
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
That's it. Pretty smooth, it wasn't.
And the started water department article.
You see anything on there, Judy, that you,
No, not really.
I hear a motion to accept it as it was originally presented?
Sure.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Unanimous approved, thank
That's
you
it.
very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Let me read the next one.
Yes, please.
The next item is permission to hunt, requested. Paul Lees has requested this for conservation lands off of Ellsworth Road, Ice Pond Drive, Kathleen Circle, and Havel Street. You, Paul?
Yeah.
Thank you for asking this. Have you gone to the selectmen yet?
No, it was originally on the agenda for last night, but they put it off. They wanted to get your input, and I'm here just to listen.
Yeah, give me just a second. I was going to display the various these are properties, but do you have some further background to provide beyond what?
You mentioned comments by the fire and police chief. Do we have copies of that? Sam?
They were in the email
Email.
Ah,
that was. I can read those into the record, but there's no reason.
it's okay, I can probably find them.
But today, the Deborah Egan, town manager, clarified apparently there have been some discussions with Tom Mullen, town council. These parcels, for some reason I'm not getting a staggered view of these things, but these parcels are, that Mr. Lees has requested to hunt on, are all under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, under the Conservation Commission Act, and more than likely protected under Article 97 as preserved open space natural resource areas. So the selectmen are going to defer to the Conservation Commission first. The Conservation Commission has the role of the property owner, or the primary property owner in this particular situation, and then the selectmen will be secondary because they are specifically named in the hunting and trapping bylaw. But they will defer to the commission's wishes in regards to these. Do you want me to read into the record my memo, or?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So dated November 28th, 2018, permission to hunt requested the selectmen by Mr. Paul Lees to hunt on conservation lands. Please be advised that I've reviewed the November 16th letter from Mr. Paul L. Lees addressed to Ms. Debbie Egan, requesting permission to hunt from the Board of Selectmen on 3 listed parcels as per the town's hunting and trapping bylaw of 1978, which was also enclosed with the communication. Review of the parcel information provided by Mr. Lees reveals that there are actually 4 parcels as follows. Map 6, parcel 19, lot A, which is land off of Ellsworth Road. It abuts map 5, parcel 9, lot 10, which is the next lot that was specified. So that's number 2, and that's noted as land off of Ice Pond Drive. Number 3 is map 8, parcel 19, lot 8, not map 18, which is identified by the assessors as 13 Kathleen Circle. And number 4 is map 13, parcel / lot 14, which is known as 467 Haverhill Street. It's the rear of Ayers Park on the Smith Lane Trail by the cell tower. Now, this does have frontage on Newburyport Turnpike, which I think is why Mr. Lees thought it was referenced as Route 1 Newburyport Turnpike. So these parcels are all listed as under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission as protected open space areas based on the Assessor's Office information and information contained in the Conservation Commission office files. The properties listed as 1, 2, and 3 do not have established or marked trails that are documented or authorized. We do know they have some trails on them. Parcel listed as number 1 is back behind land on Wilson Pond, which has only recently been provided with public access through the Twin Hills Farm OSRD 42 Newbury Road, the Sullivan project, which just the CR has been recorded, so there now is public access to a trail and parking on Newbury Road. To my knowledge, no perimeter boundary marking has been accomplished and no recent reconnaissance of those parcels is indicated in the files. Property number 4, on the other hand, is bisected by the recently developed Smith Lane Trail and also has a cellular communications tower located along the trail behind the Ayers Park Recreation Area. The files do not contain any information that any of these 4 parcels are governed by a recorded conservation restriction. The 467 Haverhill Street property contains a section of the Smith Lane Trail that leads to Dodge Reservation. The Commission decided to prohibit hunting on the Dodge Reservation as a use that is in conflict with the encouragement of horseback riding, dog walking, parentheses, and goats, since I saw that, and passive recreational use of the trails. The Commission may wish to maintain consistency on this adjoining open space property. I direct the Commissioner's attention to the comments submitted by the Fire Chief and the Police Chief. It is my understanding that the Board of Selectmen is looking for guidance from the Commission, since these are conservation areas under your direct care and custody. Please advise me if I may provide further assistance in this matter.
Would you read the police chief's
Yes.
letter, please?
Sure. This is an email dated Monday, November 26th. Debbie Egan, James Broderick, Raleigh Conservation Commission, Raleigh Highway Department, regarding hunting permission. Good morning, all. Given Mr. Lee's background and training, there is no doubt in my mind that he is both a responsible gun owner and hunter. However, I do have hesitation on allowing hunting on town property for the following reasons. Number 1, the areas being requested to hunt on are all in general areas of neighborhoods or highly traveled roadways. Although 500 feet is the setback provision provided by MGL and the town hunting bylaw, it is also my opinion that an errant round may travel further than 500 feet. While MGL Chapter 21, Section 17 suggests liability is only introduced by employing a fee for such usage, it doesn't prohibit the filing of such action should the unthinkable occur. And then it goes on, this is Section 17C, I believe, of MGL Chapter 21. Sub A, any person having an interest in land, including the structures, buildings, and equipment attached to the land, including without limitation railroad and utility corridors, easements, and rights of way, wetlands, rivers, streams, ponds, lakes, and other bodies of water, who lawfully permits the public to use such land for recreational, conservation, scientific, educational, environmental, ecological, research, religious, or charitable purposes without imposing a charge or fee therefor, or who leases such land for said purposes to the Commonwealth or any political subdivision thereof, or to any nonprofit corporation, trust, or association, shall not be liable for personal injuries or property damage sustained by such members of the public, including without limitation a minor, while on said land in the absence of willful, wanton, or reckless conduct by such person. Such permission shall not confer upon any member of the public using said land, including without limitation a minor, the status of an invitee or licensee to whom any duty should be owed by said person. Period. The next section, sub B. The liability of any person who imposes a charge or fee for use of his land by the public for the purposes described in subsection sub A shall not be limited by any provision of this section. For the purposes of this section, person shall include the person having any interest in the land, his agent, manager, or licensee, and shall include, without limitation, any governmental body, agency, or instrumentality, a nonprofit corporation, trust, association, corporation, company, or other business organization, and any director, officer, trustee, member, employee, authorized volunteer, or agent thereof. For the purposes of this section, structures, buildings, and equipment shall include any structure, building, or equipment used by an electric company, transmission company, distribution company, gas company, or railroad in the operation of its business. A contribution or other voluntary payment not required to be made to use such land shall not be considered a charge or fee within the meaning of this section. And that's the end of sub B. Number 2, again continuing from the police chief.
This is just the state laws written out?
Yeah, those two sections were the 17C. Again, having to do with the issue of if you charge something, but if you don't charge for access, then it's probably not any liability. Number 2, it is not plausible to vet each individual who seeks such permission and to vet them with an objective standard that could withstand challenges to that objectivity. Given that, we would be forced into granting all requests based upon their legal ability to possess a firearm and obtain a hunting license, or deny all requests. It is my opinion to deny all hunting requests on town-owned property. While most gun owners and most hunters are responsible and have respect for the sport and have respect for the weapon, all do not. There is no gain for the town to allow such usage. There is ample private property in the town of Raleigh for which permission could be sought. I would suggest this and all future requests be denied and consider a bylaw change prohibiting hunting on town-owned property. Respectfully, Scott A. Dumas, Chief of Police, Raleigh, Mass.
So, first thing we should do is do a vote around like in a jury? Whether we're for or against it?
Well, maybe you should have any discussions or prior to...
Yeah. I mean, right now, so what we have addressed is in the Dodge Reservation. We have addressed hunting. We specifically called it out that there would be no hunting. Is that correct?
Yes, but I'm going to further clarify that we did incorporate the option that it could be a wildlife management strategy,
Yeah.
so that it could be
Done.
it
but-
could be conducted with, our idea was like a controlled hunt if we were experiencing
Sure.
a overpopulation of deer and they were negatively impacting the vegetative understory.
So my question is that the only property under conservation control, so to speak, that we even address the hunting issue?
No, it is
No.
not. The Bradstreet Farm Conservation Area
Has
has
the
about
same-
the
similar-
same type thing.
So those are the two.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand what
Right.
what precedences have been put in place.
Now, if I may speak, the criteria was that where we were encouraging multiple use,
Sure.
on the Bradstreet Farm property, community gardens, trails, horseback riding as a potential. Myopia Hunt Club has used that property before. So we were applying that criteria to the Dodge Reservation where we were establishing a trail system, but we also had a children's summer camp being operated on it. And again, we were encouraging horseback riding. We were encouraging multiple uses on a trail system, and therefore we thought that would present an excessive risk to have hunting occur at the same time that we were encouraging people to walk on the trails or horseback ride or dog walk, goat walk.
Do most other towns, like, I know that like Andover had opened up the Parker, no, which one was it? Not Parker. They have one big piece of property up there, and they opened that for bow hunting.
Yes,
They-
so they conducted a controlled hunt where, and I don't know the exact strategy, because I didn't look into that per se. I can speak to Massachusetts Audubon on the Topsfield Ipswich Wildlife Sanctuary, did a controlled hunt there where they imposed a number of conditions, which I'm being told the commission can consider conditions if it wants to do this. They particularly limited it to select qualified individuals that they apparently vetted.
Okay.
They conducted training. They only allowed access to certain portions of their property. They also only allowed that access to occur on certain days.
Certain type of hunting, maybe not firearms.
Yes,
maybe bow
I believe it
hunting,
was just bow hunting, yes. I think Plum Island, I think, may have done the same thing, the National Wildlife Refuge.
Today, tomorrow.
Do that. But, yeah, so we do have examples. In the case of the Topsfield Sanctuary, they're not.
Willowdale allows it all
Yeah.
season for everything.
Well, I was going to say that the Topsfield Sanctuary isn't open on Mondays, so they have a day when they are relatively sure, and then
That's when they
they
do
mark, they also marked all their access points, so it was very evident.
where hunters can go in and.
Well, it was very evident where this was occurring to keep people from wandering in, because they know people walk their trails that don't necessarily come in the roadway, so.
These are all contiguous parcels, right?
No.
not.
Individual.
No,
No, they're all, that's the other.
There's only two that are relatively contiguous, but they are, for all intents and purposes, they're backland. We have very limited, like I said, we only recently gained access to the parcels that are behind Wilson Pond, and that connects to the one behind Ice Pond Drive, I believe. Kathleen Circle, even though there's a little bit of frontage just down the road from Commissioner Garner, there's no active trail, and actually most of it is made up of forested wetlands, so it's,
A little slice that gets you in.
And then it goes in.
yeah. And Ice Pond Drive has a little slice, but there is no established trail from it. So the 467 Haverhill Street is the one where we have the development trail, we have the communication towers, and that's why I suggested the commission might wish to definitely be consistent and possibly not.
Because that parcel is abuts the Dodge Reservation.
Yes, it does.
Where does that go from? Where kind of is that really, where is that piece? Exactly, I mean, I wasn't clear, I heard you talk about it.
Behind there is Park, and before you get to the Girl Scout portion of the road that goes through Weathersfield Street, but there's also a sliver that comes off of Route 1 that goes between,
Route 1 and,
right next to Gino's, in between
Right.
Gino's
Oh, thank you.
Auto Body and the.
yeah, gotcha,
Behind it, yeah.
gotcha, so that's where it is.
The next
Okay.
place, it's
Now I know
a
where it is.
tiny sliver. But it's all wet back there.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah, the Batchelder Brook River corridor goes through that, so, yeah, that isn't showing up so well, is it? Let's see if we get that shown up.
One thing that would concern me about that particular piece is that if you're in there to hunt, there's no contiguous delineation of where the Girl Scout camp begins and ends. If you go in the trail off, behind the police station, then, you do know when you get into the Girl Scout portion, but if you're any other place, you have no idea whether you're on the Girl Scout portion or not.
Yeah, actually you do. I've marked the perimeter.
Okay.
So the Dodge Reservation is the only property I can attest to does have perimeter boundary markings. And you can tell you're entering it by those small red plastic discs that say.
So where would be
town.
Dodge Reservation in that?
So here's Route 1,
Gotcha.
and there's a couple of frontage places, but the assessors tags it with 467 Haverhill Street, which is down here. This is Smith Lane.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yep, see,
Okay.
Smith Lane, right there. The cell tower, communications tower is right there.
Okay.
And then this is where it interfaces and connects on into Dodge Reservation, what used to be the Girl Scout property. And so the Smith Lane Trail, that's the Woods Road that's all opened up and is actually the main corridor.
13-1 there is the ball field, and
Pardon me?
13-1 there is the town property, 13 piece of property, 13 dash
Down the
1.
bottom.
Yeah, 13-1, this is the Ayers Park. Yep.
Okay.
But this is also town property here too, these two parcels, that's Water Department, and this is the parcel that has the ball field on it.
Yeah, right.
Right behind, or across from Agawam Diner and behind Route 1 Liquors. So,
Yes, Paul.
Can I just
Sure.
speak for just a minute? So to simplify this, I think in light of the discussion, I spoke with Chief Dumas about firearms, and I recognize what he's saying. I'm going to modify my request before the Board of Selectmen to go with strictly bow and arrow. And of the 3 parcels, I know there's 4, but the only thing I'm going to ask the Selectmen is for the 2 parcels that are behind my house off Wilson Pond. Kathleen Circle, I didn't know a board member lived nearby, so I'm going to scratch that. And with regard to the Smith Lane, I wasn't aware of the restriction for Dodge Reservation. I wasn't aware of that, so those 2 parcels I'm going to withdraw. I'm just going to ask the Selectmen for the parcel. There's 2 parcels behind my house. My means of access would be through my neighbor, Jerry Clear. He actually abuts those properties, and he's given me permission. So I just wanted to tell you that, you've got a full audience here, and I don't want to belabor
and
the point.
we may remember Mr. Clear because he's the gentleman whose driveway crosses the outlet of Wilson Pond, and he has now a nice functioning beaver deceiver. I checked it after all the rains. He also has the Beaver Lodge right adjacent to his driveway too. If you really like beavers, you can knock on their door and see if they'll let you in for a snack or something.
All right, anybody from the board have any?
Well, my thoughts changed in light of the new information about the bow hunting. I think I had significant reservations given the fact of the use of a firearm in proximity to residences. I sort of sympathize with the police chief. But given that we're now talking about a much kind of different scope, if that is to be discussed on limited parcels with a different mechanism, I think I'm more inclined to consider it, worthy of consideration. That was not the case at the beginning of this discussion.
May I request a clarification from Mr. Lees? In your letter, you explained your methodology of hunting utilizing tree stands and therefore aiming down. Are you stipulating that that will be your only method of hunting on those parcels? So the trajectory of the arrows is all going to be going in a manner that it intersects the ground without traveling long distances, which appeared to be part of one of the concerns of the police chief.
Right, yeah, no, that would certainly be a condition. I mean, bow hunting and out of a tree stand, I use a portable tree stand is what I use, not something that you fasten to the tree. And I find that, as I said in my letter, 90% of the time I do that. When I gun hunt, I don't, but gun hunting is not part of this request at this stage. It's just going to be just for bow. So I would utilize a tree stand. When you hunt deer with a bow, you have to get very close to them, and if you're on the ground, you're not gonna shoot a deer with a bow. You've gotta be up where they don't see you.
Yeah.
So I would be shooting down into the ground. That would be the trajectory.
Okay, I wanted to help.
Anybody from the audience have anything to say in regards to this? Good?
Two thoughts, and they're in opposition to each other. One is that the fewer deer we have in town, the better. They come through my yard. I contracted a bad tick disease this summer, and I think the town is overpopulated with deer. We put all these solar facilities in town, and the deer population that exists on that acreage is going to go somewhere else, and it's just going to get worse and worse. So I'm all in favor of thinning the deer herd significantly. That said, I think that it would make sense for the town to have a prohibition against hunting on town land, regardless of means. Where do I come out on that?
I'm pro hunting, but I don't know if I'm pro hunting on town land.
Why not?
I think once you open it,
Which has always been.
how are you gonna control it?
I grew up, it was all.
I know, by the way, believe me, my only concern is, by the way, I am pro hunting, so I would like to see.
Let's do
more
it on
hunting,
somebody
but
else's property, right?
Well, my problem is how do you control,
That's what laws.
is this gonna be, so is every time somebody wants to hunt, they gotta come to us?
Right now,
This
in
is a
Rowley,
town-
you
this is a
cannot
town
hunt in
bylaw.
Rowley at
So
all.
every
unless
time
have
you wanna
landowner
hunt,
permission.
Well, and they,
Yeah,
I
fair
don't
enough.
mean to interject, but you are supposed to have written permission per the regulations in the Commonwealth to hunt on anyone else's property.
Right.
So this is just, for a municipality, this bylaw appears to be just a mechanism to establish a process for that to be accomplished instead of you not knowing about which town department you should talk to or whatever. Now, in the specific case of open space and conservation areas, by state statute, they're specifically under the care and custody of the commission. So the bylaw names the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen, for parcels under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, are looking to this board for specificity and whether any conditions on land that they have direct oversight for. And then,
That'll make
so
it-
then we will communicate that to the Board of Selectmen. But you are very capable of granting it on some parcels, not granting it on others.
Okay.
You are capable of putting in the stipulation that it shall
Bow hunting.
only be done by bow during the appropriate bow season, and that it shall only be done from a tree stand. Yeah, I mean, you can do that, and as the chief said, you know, people have a process for obtaining hunting licenses, and there's a whole set of rules and regulations that they need to follow on anybody's property.
Sam?
Well, I first want to make the point that if we decide for one person, any other person that fits the qualifications we set is allowed. So if we just say that Ms. Louise can hunt on one or two pieces of property, and then he has to use the tree stand, he has to be bow and arrow, then yes, others can apply to do that, but it doesn't at all involve any other type of hunting. And I think that needs to be understood by everybody. I've been not able to make my mind up on this until right now. And the reality is, I think I agree with it. I agree with allowing them to. With those stipulations, and those my knowledge, are extremely limiting.
Well, I'm all for hunting, any kind of hunting.
Yeah,
So,
Judy?
Judy, you got one?
Well, I would have to say my response to this is admittedly almost purely emotional. However, I have had a background in bow and arrow shooting. My father shot a deer with his bow and arrow, and that was enough for him, but we ate venison for a year, and it was interesting. I am also trained shooting, target shooting, skeet shooting. I'm just not comfortable with this at all. I've encountered too many, I'm sorry, you're not one of them, I'm sure, but you're responsible people with weapons. And I don't think we should take a situation like this under our aegis to be, in a sense, responsible for this. And I just don't like killing, that's another thing. But, you know, I feel badly that we crowded these creatures out of their natural habitat, and now we're, you know, killing them. But as I say, I'm purely emotional on this, even though I understand overpopulation, et cetera, So anyway, my vote would be no.
I mean, everybody's saying how they don't want the poor deer killed. Well, how many dogs were ripped apart yesterday in Massachusetts? Something like 12? Coyotes?
What?
We had one in Salisbury, one in Amesbury. So, I mean, coyotes are also huntable.
Yeah, I know. Mainly turkey and deer.
Selectmen are going to deliberate on this question, and the selectmen have the opportunity.
I think we're
to
biting off
say
a lot
whether-
to have to have the responsibility for,
But we don't have
Having-
any responsibility. We
well,
can't
if
be
it's
held
our
liable.
land.
Huh?
If it's our land and we said it's all right.
We're not charging.
Yeah, we're not
Massachusetts
charging.
says we are not liable.
we're not liable to the charge.
I think you're talking moral liability, and I'll agree with your point.
Didn't we have a case a couple
Well,
of
I've
years
had to
ago?
run people off my property who were out
Yeah.
there shooting anything that moved.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Squirrels, chickadees. So I marched across the field with my 2 children on each hand and my dog. And I don't know where the heck these people were from, but they weren't local.
Didn't we
But
have
they
an
saw a field, okay, I'm gonna go out and kill a few things.
Didn't we have an application a couple of years ago to hunt off the hillside? that-
Yes, we did.
And we said no because we felt it was too close to population areas.
Actually, we didn't say no.
Had concerns that way, anyway.
We identified that that particular piece of conservation land, which runs along the Mill River corridor and happens to be behind all these residences with frontage on hillside, is used the pictometry and identified that you almost couldn't be anywhere on that conservation land without being within 500 feet of one of those occupied dwellings. So we said to the person that when you come back with written permission from the occupants and owners of each one of those dwellings, we'll be happy to reconsider once you obtain the written approval that you're supposed to have from. And we never heard from the person because that was, I received one phone call from someone who indicated that they weren't comfortable with someone discharging firearms or even shooting a bow and arrow behind their residence. So I have a feeling he probably wasn't able to obtain any written permissions from those folks. But that, like I said, we've got a narrow strip of land back there. It's got a long length. Goes from Weathersfield Street all the way up almost to Glen Street, but it's all fronted by occupied residences along the street now.
I've got another question about Ice Pond. Ice Pond Drive, there are circle homes around that, and there's an easement through to some back property. There are 3 or 4 relatively new homes have been built back in there. And where is the Ice Pond property that,
You'd need a snorkel.
behind that,
And a
those
wetsuit.
home areas?
Aren't we looking at that right now?
No, you'd need a snorkel and a wetsuit. That beavers have got in there. Because we thought it would be nice to stop trapping beavers.
Well, actually, I've actually never been into the Ice Pond.
That's a joke. He doesn't want that.
So there's a very narrow corridor that provides frontage on there. Recently, new owners occupied map 594, and the previous owners had decided to put some maintained lawn and some rhododendrons. So when the property was being surveyed, and I had the surveyors mark our easement, they staked it, and then these new folks tore the stakes out. So I was ought to be talking to you at some point in time about a carefully worded letter to them about adverse possession and the fact that there wasn't permission to be landscaping and planting ornamentals on conservation land. But anyway, that is a totally different matter from the subject at hand. There is no developed trail, no developed access, but I think what Chairman Page is talking about is there's a stream corridor that works its way through here. This is what this indication of this floodplain and its associated wetlands, which, as we usually experience in Rowley, they show you that half the parcel has got wetlands on it. We probably go out there and find that 2/3 to 3/4 is probably forested wetlands.
So is that still a piece of property that he said he'd like to hunt? Or am I misinterpreting?
I had the same question. Yeah.
I thought he took that off the table.
Not
Well,
that one.
That one's still on the
That's
table.
the
This
one.
abuts the parcel that's right behind Ice Pond Drive. I can switch to that. I did these
I'm confused
individually.
now as to what parcels we're talking about are still on the table.
Do you have my memo in front of you?
No?
Okay. We're talking about the parcels identified as 1 and 2, so here's the one that's identified as 1.
Okay, so that's one.
Right. And the Clear residence is right here. They have a driveway that comes down and crosses the outlet stream. So there's a bunch of forested wetlands, but this property also has this kind of truncated, narrow point. I don't know the history, so I don't know why it looks like that. This is the Sullivan conservation restriction that has a path that leads into this area here. This is the 50 Newbury Road, which this property has not yet been deeded to the town, but is proscribed to be deeded to the town, which will then give us another point of access where we haven't had access before to those parcels.
That's Wilson Pond that's on
And
the
that is
map
Wilson
there.
Pond, the blue.
And looking north, which is towards the top of the Ice Pond, is further north.
Right,
Yeah.
but the property we're talking about that goes up to Ice Pond Drive, that's this parcel right here.
Right.
That's the bottom.
Just south of Ice Pond Drive,
Southern.
there were at least 3 homes that were built in there by a developer from Georgetown.
Well, it's shifted, those are over closer to Leslie. They're closer to Leslie.
All right, let me just do a roll call vote. How many are for we'll call it a restricted hunting, which would be bow and arrow hunting, out of a stand, on town property,
On the 2 properties.
on limited town
On
property?
the- on the
Maybe
property 1 and property 2.
if we word it, and if it passes, we'll say on certain pieces of land.
Well, we'll designate the 2,
Yeah.
we'll specifically name the 2 properties.
But unless we get something else in the future or something.
Right now, we're just voting on
Right,
this.
so how many would vote yay on that?
I'll go
Allowing bow hunting on town
On
land.
those two,
Out of a
you're
stand.
saying, you're asking for a yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, and so you people are against any kind of hunting on town land?
At the moment.
Yeah, I have a problem, especially these parcels, and it's too close to the homes. And I think it's possible that people would be in there. You know, it's just too close to me.
Okay, Kids want
We got it.
Oh, that was an official motion?
Well, I don't know, no.
Well, it's
It was 3 to,
4 to 3. 4 to 3.
you guys okay with that? If we just say that
Yes.
majority Concom
I'm
was for
fine
eliminate?
with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I
So-
said, the selectmen are gonna deliberate on this.
Yeah,
They
give them the
may have a
figures that
different, a different
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah,
It's not
It ought to be the
just
selectmen's final decision.
Yeah.
This is a recommendation.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
it is selectmen's final approval, but again, we're serving in the, because we have direct custody and care, we're serving in the role of the property owner, but the bylaw identifies the Board of Selectmen having to issue permission. So we are advising the Board of Selectmen.
So we're gonna send a letter, Paul, stating that it was a split decision, but, you know, it was 4-3. We had a full court.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone, and also the people in the audience. Thank you.
All right, good luck, Paul. Thank you for bringing that up.
So for purposes of a motion, does anyone wish to take the role of being the one who offered the motion and then seconding the motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
I think given the growth of the town and the new building that's going on, the increasing population, the selectmen need to decide that it might make sense just to ban hunting altogether on town-owned land. And that doesn't keep private property owners from permitting it. Otherwise, we get into this every time somebody wants to do some hunting in town-owned land.
Well, I'm going to offer the professional advice, though, that as land managers and stewards, where we are having our conservation restrictions codifying the option for controlled hunt with purposes of managing the resource, I would hope the commission would communicate that so that it wouldn't just be a flat outright prohibition, that there would be the clause in there for the Conservation Commission to be able to conduct controlled hunts if they deem the
Right.
situation calls for it.
Fully agree with
With permission of selectmen.
Right, again, if something like that advances, but we're speculating a little bit because we're not at that point at this point. If you wish to read the
Yes,
next.
okay, the next item,
Can I just
yes.
add something? We spent a lot of time in this last issue, and maybe some people here that are, you know, that are here for something else.
We can
Maybe we could kind
We
of.
could
defer
go
the
back.
administrative
Yeah,
item until
yeah.
later.
Right.
Certainly. So in that case, stick this down.
All right, this is a legal notice of Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40 is amended, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Public hearing will be held Tuesday, December 4th, 2018, 7:45, Room 5, Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider the notice of intent application filed by Lawrence Hunter for the proposed construction of a 14 by 33 foot addition to an existing residence possibly within 200 riverfront area of Mill River and a 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands at 407 Weathersfield Street, map 19, parcel 8, lot 2 in Raleigh.
That'd be me.
All right, Larry, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you.
You
Yep.
need that one to go up on your own?
I don't know what it, I don't know what it is.
Received by Deborah from, when we gave her this.
That was for us.
No, that's yours.
Okay, we need that two signatures.
Oh.
Where's the signature?
Okay.
No? This is the map of our existing property. There's no probably about this, we're definitely on all your jurisdictions, so.
Right.
But what's new is this is my son Nathan and his wife and 2 children are living with us now in our existing home, and we'd like to put an addition onto the house so that they can live there on a permanent basis. As you all know, it's very difficult to afford homes in Raleigh these days, so we're looking for a solution to that particular problem. We currently have a paved driveway off Weathersfield Street that does abut the river. We're looking just to put an addition on that is 14 feet out and 33 feet back away from the river going there. All the property, the entire addition will be over, again, the existing paved driveway. We have checked with the Board of Health and with the building department, there's no issues with zoning to do what we're looking to do. So we need your permission and the order of conditions, if you give us permission, in order to...
No, I'm gonna turn it over to my agent here, who has obviously been out in the field. Is the water usually that high?
No, that was a couple days ago. It's usually not visible. I'm sure Kirk sees similar type of things from his house. We actually have similar topography from where our homes are, up above where the water is.
So I have prepared a memorandum that hopefully the commission, I realize it was authored this afternoon, so if you wish me to read it, I can do that. If you want me to read it to the record, or, actually, that might be the best thing, actually. Go over this a little bit. So, dated today, notice of intent application, 407 Weathersfield Street, map 19, parcel 8, lot 2, owned by Lawrence Hunter. Please be advised that I have reviewed the notice of intent application package and submitted plan titled Proposed Addition 407 Weathersfield Street, Raleigh, Mass., dated November 16, 2018, prepared by Mr. Jacob R. Murray, professional engineer. I visited the property on November 27th with Mr. Lawrence Hunter. And so on the screen here, I think that's evident. This is the view, and yes, we've had recent rainfall, so that is one of the reasons why the wetlands that's associated with Mr. Hunter's driveway and side embankment there, you can kind of see a little pink wetlands flag sticking up there. The wetlands is really saturated. Since in case it isn't evident, I've been getting a lot of calls about folks communicating with our office saying that their property is wetter than it's ever been, and they're building next to me, and aren't they causing it? Well, in the last 2.5 months, when we checked a week or so ago, the rainfall for the last 2.5 months was 21 point some odd inches in Essex County. Our annual rainfall for 12 months is normally 42. So we basically have had 6 months worth of precipitation in the last 2.5 months. And you could make an argument that we got 2 storms a week away from each other that probably had a month's worth of precipitation in just those 2 storms. So yes, so the wetlands are wet. And let's see. To show some other aspects here. Yellow driveway stake is representing the edge of the proposed addition that's in closest proximity to the wetlands, and is cutting off a little portion of the driveway that, if you're looking at the plan, coincides with where the existing shed is. Make a little bit of a case, and there's a better picture of it right there where the shed is located. You can see the stake indicating the corner this would be the westernmost corner of the proposed addition. Northwest. Well, actually not northwest, it actually would be the southwest corner.
Oh, you're right.
Of the addition, technically. So anyway, just to, again, give us a little bit of familiarity with the site. Now, this is looking in the easterly direction off the corner of the existing pavement. It's kind of hard to convey this in a picture, but this slopes down, and going to the right of the picture where you see the front fender of my car, that goes into an area that isn't maintained lawn or landscape, leading to where the culvert and where flagged bordering vegetated wetlands comes with the flow that's coming from Weathersfield Street and traveling across the abutting property.
I just put up a decorative deer fence.
Yeah. To keep them from escaping, right? Now, there was also a request that Mr. Hunter made to me while on the site. So the orange X's on the bottoms of those trees are his request for these trees to be cut during this project so that they don't overhang and cause an issue with the driveway, if I remember correctly.
Backing out.
So I'll continue on with reading from my memo. So the proposed project consists of a 14 by 33 foot addition to the existing single-family residence. The addition is proposed to be located on the southwestern side of the existing structure over a paved area that served as entrance to the two-bay garage under, as well as parking and terminus of the driveway. The project area is within the 200-foot riverfront area of the Mill River and the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands, BVW, projected from flagged wetlands delineation Series A and Series B for those who might be looking at the plans. I can bring up the plans a little better here. And just note, so this is wetland Series A. Mill River is up here. The existing structure is here. The shed is here. And the proposed addition is this bold black dashed line. And the other little wetlands area that I was referring to comes down, and then there's a culvert underneath the driveway that conducts flow and takes it into the wetlands associated with the Mill River, just to orient folks. So wetlands Series A, is associated with the Mill River and is adjacent to bordering land subject to flooding, BLSF, which does not encompass the existing structure or the proposed addition area. On the plan, BLSF is indicated by the approximate high water level. That is this other sort of dashed with big spaces line that curves around here. And that was established in 2014, where they had an engineering survey and they submitted a letter to FEMA, which is called a LOMA process, which is called Letter of Map Amendment, because the FEMA maps showed floodplain extending into his dwelling, which gives you insurance problems and other things that you don't necessarily need if, in fact, the topography of your land actually doesn't have bordering land subject to flooding, your dwellings intruding into bordering land subject to flooding, or the 100-year floodplain, as most of us call it. So Wetland Series B is on the eastern side of the driveway and connects to the culvert depicted as running under the driveway. The flow westerly is sourced from Weathersfield Street and travels overland on the abutting property to the east. The flow in the Mill River is in a northerly direction at this location. So whereas property boundaries are not depicted on the submitted plan, the applicant's statement that BVW and riverfront area are located on the abutting town conservation area to the northwest seems misstated, since the assessor's boundary depiction and our field visit confirms the presence of those resource areas on Mr. Hunter's property. The proposed addition appears almost entirely within the 100-foot inner riparian zone of the riverfront area. So the application states that the property contains 160,548 square feet of riverfront area, and that the proposed project will alter 462 square feet. This appears to represent slightly less than 0.003% of the riverfront area, and thus complies with no more than 10% of riverfront proposed for alteration. The regulations have a standard that 10% is the upper limit of riverfront that you can alter or disturb. So I go on. The alternatives analysis discusses that roof runoff is considered cleaner than pavement runoff, and thus makes the case that the proposed project is an improvement of existing conditions. While technically true, this proposed project doesn't offer any steps to either divert the runoff from direct discharge into the adjacent wetland resource areas or any attempt to slow or infiltrate the runoff. The short distance and low topography certainly makes any proposed BMP or best management practice for stormwater a challenge. Mr. Hunter and I discussed two possibilities which would appear to be capable of being implemented, but are recognized as only providing limited treatment and interception. The first would be a crushed stone infiltration trench located between the existing shed and the existing structure and extended where pavement is removed prior to the addition, lengthening the drip edge at the western side of the proposed addition. So actually what I'm trying to say there, and I'm probably lost everybody, is where the shed is, and there's a gap between the shed and the existing structure. And there's also a pass door there, single wide pass door. Right now, there is some crushed stone on the ground. It really seems to be full of sediment and stuff. So I'm not sure whether it was actually a designed infiltration trench or not.
There is French drainage around the perimeter down there, below there, and above that.
But my proposal,
Yeah.
as we discussed, since I'm anticipating that the pavement, which has to be cut off for the foundation to go in, that the pavement's probably going to be removed, is basically to have that drip line, that new roof edge, be a crushed stone infiltration trench. It's not going to be able to be very deep because it's from the floodplain of the Mill River, it's probably only got like 12 to 16 inches of elevation or whatever, but it would still be something that, number one, would stop sediment. If that gets reloamed or whatever, sediment is just going to be dug up from dripping off the roof. There's no place for a gutter to go. He doesn't have gutters on that particular side of the house, but again, there wouldn't be any way to direct that. It would just concentrate it. So a drip line and a crushed stone infiltration trench seems the most pragmatic approach to the roof runoff on that side of the structure. On the eastern side, gutters and downspout already capture roof runoff and discharge to the paved driveway. It appears that there might be the possibility to redirect this through a short subsurface pipe to outlet north of flags B2 and B3 of the BVW, where the terrain slopes away from the pavement. That was one of the pictures that I had showed you. Whoops, go back to the pictures here. Yeah, actually, oops, that was it. Yeah, so this is looking, from the back of the photographer is where the new addition would be, and that side of his house has a gutter on it already, where the downspout coming down that just right now discharges on the pavement. But we talked about the possibility of doing some type of trench underneath there and having a pipe extend over into this area and basically discharged into the unmanicured. So it would be unmanicured buffer zone. It would get some flow and it would give it about maybe 15 or 20 feet before it flows into where the wetlands in that culvert
If
actually
it
is.
just goes on a driveway right now, the way it is,
It
Will it make
goes
it to the
right
grass?
directly over into
Oh, it would.
into
Go
the
to the
wetland.
grass.
Yeah, it only goes across maybe 6 feet of grass as it drops off and goes right into the wetlands. So this would give it
yeah.
a little more roundabout route and might facilitate, it would facilitate more removal of
Sediment.
anything being washed off of the driveway or the roof. It would give it a little bit more opportunity, a little upgrading of the river to try and infiltrate into the soils. Yeah. So it's not perfect. Again, the benefit might not counterbalance the treatment since roof runoff is considered clean. I'm stating that right up front. But this still might at least keep the runoff from being discharged and flowing across the pavement where it potentially picks up some pollutants from vehicle passage. So I'm just putting it out there. The erosion controls, as mentioned in the application and depicted on the submitted plan sheet, are not in keeping with the Commission's current practices. This project seems especially well suited to using filter sock filled with bark mulch or compost and installed on the outer edges of the proposed work area where maintained lawn makes a good site for obtaining that close bare-ground contact that makes the sock work so well. The plan should be revised to depict filter sock with the correct method of joining the ends side by side and the correct method of anchoring the sock in place. Next paragraph. Due to the closeness of the wetland resource areas on site, I am not prepared to offer any recommendation on establishing a no-cut, no-disturbance zone. I would request that the Commission consider discussing with Mr. Hunter if he would agree to some special conditions below that would lessen the impact to groundwater and the river. At this particular site, and where the driveway sheds all of its runoff directly into the BVW on the banks of the Mill River, the following conditions would lessen the potential negative impact to groundwater. First condition is that pesticides and herbicides shall not be used within the adjacent undeveloped wetland resource areas. This condition shall survive the expiration of OC and shall be included as a continuing condition in perpetuity on the certificate of compliance. Number 2, any fertilizer used for landscaping or lawn care used within the developed portion of the property and within 100 feet of a wetland resource area and within the 200-foot riverfront area, which is the whole lawn area around his residence, shall be slow-release organic granular-type fertilizers low in nitrogen content. This condition shall survive the expiration of the OC and shall be included as a continuing condition in perpetuity on the certificate of compliance. Number 3, sodium chloride, rock salt, shall not be used within the project site for the purposes of ice control. Again, this condition shall survive the expiration of this OC and shall be included as a continuing condition in perpetuity on the certificate of compliance. 4, only the following de-icing chemicals: calcium chloride, calcium magnesium acetate, and any non-sodium-based DEP-approved de-icing compounds are allowed for minimal usage. This condition shall survive the expiration of this OC and shall be included as a continuing condition in perpetuity on the certificate of compliance. Unless the Commission has other concerns to be addressed, the Commission may decide to close the hearing and consider issuance of an order of conditions incorporating the special conditions as above. Please advise if I need further assistance.
Anybody have any questions on that? Now you've read the conditions that
I
Brent
have.
put in it, and you agree to that?
I have no objection.
No problems?
So there isn't any change in the septic system
No.
required. And I just want to make sure I understand the drawing.
Let me back up 1 minute. We have a permitted 4-bedroom septic system now. The Board of Health has said that they might require us to put a deed restriction on the property to keep it as a 4-bedroom. We agreed
Sure.
to do it.
Okay. The other question is just to make sure I understand this drawing correctly. You're coming out, starting at the back of the house, and it goes across 14 feet?
It would be, no, yeah, it would be the...
That's
yeah,
the back of the house there?
That would be the shed right here. Here's existing right there, correct? So it'll be coming back out toward the driveway.
Yeah, my difficulty in looking at this is that it's kind of compressed and that I'm not really guaranteed sure that that line in there is anything. So I'm asking simply, it comes out 14
Correct.
feet from the
Correct.
back of the house,
Right.
it goes forward 33,
Right.
and then it jets back a bit to the house.
Correct.
Okay. And that's basically all driveway at this point.
Correct. That much. maybe.
Yeah,
Almost.
previously developed and paved area, almost entirely.
Correct.
So your suggestions about routing the water off the roof into that area, that'll be part of this? Or it's just the 4 conditions?
Well, it will be part of it. Well, first off, I'm putting it out there for your consideration, as well as the fact that Mr. Hunter is here. And again, because I have a discussion on site, I want you folks to also be participants in the same discussion. You just
But
don't
it sounds
have
like a great idea, I just want to make sure that that
Right.
would be part of this.
But I am just trying to put it out there that this is not the best situation. This is just trying to work with the
All parties
characteristics
concerned.
of his home and his terrain. And really, it's more or less a strategy that instead of that runoff that goes right across his driveway and now only has 6 feet of lawn to go off of, it's a strategy to send it over, have it go across anywhere from 20 feet of vegetated surface before it makes its way into the wetland that's on the eastern side of his driveway, and then it'll work its way underneath the driveway and into the wetlands on the other side, heading towards the Mill River. It basically just lengthens the trip that stormwater takes across a vegetated landscape, which does some
And the applicant
filtering.
says he's fine with that.
And that is part of the special conditions.
It will be if everyone is amenable to it, yes.
That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, those 4 conditions are not the only conditions that are going to be on
These
this
will be these
permit.
others.
There are other standard
Thank
conditions
you,
for
that's what I'm
erosion
trying to
control.
get clarity.
I'm sorry, I may not have stated that as
Thank you. You
explicitly.
have now, though.
Any other questions? Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I assume that you've looked at the roof thickness.
Oh, yeah. Actually, looking at his residence is what initiated my
Yeah, okay.
Here it is. If I may get
Because this is new to us, just wait for formal order of conditions.
Yes. I'm sending you a formal permit
Right.
with a brief cover sheet that talks about, there's a 10-day appeal period once they actually issue that permit. And then at the end of that 10-day appeal period, that needs to be recorded at the registry in Salem, the South District Registry. And there will be various conditions in there talking about the erosion control. I am requesting that there be a revision to this plan and that the erosion control sock be depicted. Since there's a depiction of hay bales on here, I find that contractors do a lot better if the written permit and the plan have the same thing on it. It's a better chance that they're going to put the right thing in place the first time.
Not the engineer just drawing
Yeah.
the sock as opposed to anything else.
And to be quite honest with you, it's actually easier and it's more conducive to your
No,
project.
I've seen them before.
Yeah, the hay bale's rotten, you gotta stake them the right way and whatever. At least with the sock, it's capable of being
Track more
adjusted. This particular type of sock that I've recommended is a little more durable and on a close quarter site like you have, where somebody backs into it, you don't want it to just all of a sudden become non-functional just because it gets winged a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Well, the next item is the continued item with Mr. Jakulis, and I haven't had any communications or anything
Well,
from him. Now,
I've read this enough, can I just say that we will talk about this next year? Rather than read, I've
How can you continue?
I'm gonna have to reach out to him for permission to continue.
Continue, right.
We
Since
sent
the
him.
last time we talked, you haven't had any more.
Well, I have talked to him, and what developed is the stormwater checklist. Now, under the Wetlands Protection Act, there's a there's a specific stormwater checklist. Now, he had filled that out for the first order of conditions. And because things changed a little bit, when he sent in his response to the consultant's last suggestions, which also included 2 revised plan sheets, so that they accurately reflected what the consultant had identified as being some either omissions or not quite looking the right way. I communicated, he actually asked me, he said, I can't find in my records the checklist for the first order of conditions. Well, I found it, number 10 on it, where it talks about illicit discharges, actually wasn't filled out. And you may remember that one of the suggestions from the consultant was about a statement dealing with illicit discharges. And I believe I told the commission that I would recommend that be included in the certificate of compliance request, because we really want, post-construction is when we want the engineer who not only tells us that it was built as specified in the order of condition, we also want a statement from them that there aren't any illicit connections. In other words, when they put the drainage system in place, I mean, that's the time when somebody might do the wrong thing or connect it to the wrong thing. So you want the engineer to basically give you a statement that, no, there aren't any illicit discharges, we didn't run a pipe directly into the wetlands and dumping the road runoff right into the BBW or something. So from past experience, I know that that's something that you just tag onto the certificate of compliance request, where you ask for the professional statement that this has been built according to the permit, or they tell you what deviations occur. So I sent that to him. I found the old one and I sent him a new one, and I said, we'd like you to fill out the new one, put the new date on it for the amended order, because remember, this project changed. This went from duplex dwellings to now 12 single-family homes instead of, was it 10 duplexes?
Yeah, it's gonna be 10.
And I just haven't heard from him, and we sent him the agenda.
So
To let him know
in
that
a
it
case
was
like this
on.
where we had agreed upon continuance, the person doesn't show, what do we, from a process?
Even
point of
if
view-
we don't have their permission, we have 21 days within which to issue. Now, the problem with that 21-day thing is this is the one time of year
Where we
when
don't
there's
have
more than
21
21-day gap. I'm sure he's going to, it must have just slipped his mind or something's happened, who knows? I mean, I'm not going to speculate, but
Yeah,
for some reason,
that's not our job.
he isn't in attendance and didn't communicate with us. But I'll reach out to him, so I don't think we're at any jeopardy. But one way or the other, we are so close to having everything finished with him.
Do you want me to vote on this, or do you reach out and talk to him?
We can't do a continuance
can't.
since he's not here to agree to it.
Oh, you can?
We
Well,
can continue it on our
We
own.
can, we've done
We
it
continue?
many
Oh,
times.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, you can still agree
I'm
within
gonna,
us.
I'm gonna ask him for after-the-fact permission, because again, it either slipped his mind or something has interfered with his attendance tonight. He normally would have emailed me this afternoon with
Say,
permission
hey,
to continue. I was actually expecting him to email and give me the PDFs of the forms he'd filled out, to be honest with you, but anyway.
I will move to continue to a time uncertain.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks for the clarification.
The reason I wanted to do that is if he panics and says, you know, I need to have this done, we might need a meeting on the 29th of the month or something.
Yeah, we've done that.
Particularly if a 21-day period is told.
Want me to just read the certificate of compliance?
Sure.
The next item, if we're going in this order, is going to be a certificate of compliance request. It's a new request for certificate of compliance at 414 Havel Street, map 14, parcel 34, lot 1, Gateway 2 Trust, 1997.
Tyler Ferrick with DeRosa Environmental, for the record, here representing the property owner. If you recall, this is the property right behind Nagawam Diner, where they did the medical facility and the daycare. So this is that parcel. Originally, everything was pretty much completed in 2017. Meridian Associates came in for a partial certificate of compliance for the buildings and paved areas as construction was done, and that was done January 2018. So the only portions of the project which were outstanding, which we were waiting on, was for the 2-year establishment period for a lot of the mitigation plantings. Kind of had a lot of things going there. There was a bioretention basin on the plan you see here, a wetland restoration area which kind of has the orange around it, which that one was created. Infiltration basin on the far left.
So let me just briefly orient them, because
Yes.
this is Haverhill Street, right here. This is that Olympic, what is it, Olympic paint and siding or whatever that occupied.
And off the vines on the left there.
Yeah,
Yes.
this goes over, and ultimately this is the new parking area that's right in front of Off the Bond. Down in that lower corner. Sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
no,
they
no,
knew
yeah,
where.
that's fine. So just brief summary, all plantings were originally done in April 2017, so they had the 2-year establishment period. Due to the gypsy moth infestation, which I'm sure many of you saw, especially along Haverhill Street, that was one of the big hit areas. We lost some of the oak trees, so this fall we actually replaced them with red maples as they don't really attack them. So we were kind of thinking long-term plan for that, and what's the point of putting in more oaks? And yeah, at this point, the wetland restoration area is fully established. It's working well. All the grades were very well. All wetland indicator plants were doing really well, and we're just here to get the final certificate of compliance.
So a partial certificate of compliance was issued earlier, basically covering such things as making sure the buildings had spill containment kits, secondary storage for some of the cleaning chemicals and stuff, since this is in our drinking water supply. And that was also used as an interim period to take a look at stability of the slopes. The bioretention planted wetlands basin in the front had some washouts of the slopes coming from the parking area. That grading was massaged and those rills taken care of. So yeah, everything's pretty much successful now. There was some die-off, and so there was some replanting done this fall. But in terms of the overall status of the replanted areas and the vegetative community, they had greater than 75% plant community establishment. And in fact, the herbaceous layer is just great. The removal of the invasives seems to have really tipped the point there, where there's very little sprouting and stuff going on at this point. Not delusional, I know the birds will just drop some new seeds and stuff in there, but but in terms of the density that originally was on the site, in terms of things like bittersweet and stuff, that's been pretty successfully had the stuffing knocked out of it. So it's very, very nice looking. Now the only thing is, in the report, you mentioned amphibian egg masses.
Yes.
And stuff. So this property did not have, when we started off on this project, did not have indications that there might be a vernal pool on the property. But you folks saw some amphibian egg masses, so I guess the question, I'm glad you're here tonight, because I didn't have the time to talk to you today, I apologize. Do you think there's the potential that we could achieve certification of that inundated wetlands area being classified as a vernal pool? Or is this just kind of a transitory expression that...
That was just an observation we came across when we were out there, and just so happened to be the breeding season so we could actually see the egg masses.
Right.
We did not survey the whole pool as it goes all the way to Route 1. But in that little area, there was actually button bush that were growing in there, so we could see a couple egg masses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's all these requirements to certify it. It's
Right.
possible. We didn't.
Are
go
there
through that.
fish, did you ever see fish in there?
We never did see fish in there.
See, because fish are usually the big thing that will
Right,
immediately.
any predatory,
Yeah.
fish. Which I wouldn't think, but I don't know if that culvert is a straight pipe into the river on the other side or not.
Yeah.
So
Theoretically, it is.
it's,
Theoretically, it is.
I know there's a lot of problems with it.
It
so I don't
goes
know.
through a lot of beavers
If-
before it gets anywhere near
Yeah,
that
so-
brook.
Yeah. But it was cool to see. It was cool to see. It was, there's some function there.
So there isn't any obligation on either the landowner's part or the commission's part to try to achieve certification of that as being a vernal pool. I guess on the flip side of the coin, I would say this is really a great indicator that shows that this project has not had, as near as we can see, a detrimental impact, and we may actually probably take a little patting on the back here that the bordering vegetated wetlands that serves as a replacement to the isolated vegetated wetlands that was filled for this project, that we've actually got a functioning wetlands plant community that's providing good habitat value, and the froggies apparently, or salamanders, think it's absolutely great. And what more could we possibly ask for, since in many cases, wetlands replication areas are, on the Commonwealth as a whole, there's a really bad rate at them not being successful, and I would say that we've got kind of a testimony here that actually the Raleigh Conservation Commission, with the appropriate property owner and environmental consultants, is actually doing very successful wetlands replication. I mean, if the critters say it's okay, then, I mean, and the plants, I mean, it's kind of like, okay, who are we to argue? So I would,
With their tails.
and also in the file from earlier is the illicit discharge certification from a professional engineer. So I can state to the commission that if you so choose, I would recommend the issuance of a complete certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions.
Do I hear some motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Aye.
Judy? Judy, thank you.
One of our beacons, sir.
Depends on which end of the table you sit.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Beacons,
Good idea.
I was louder.
There you were.
Pardon me?
He was ready to go.
I got looking at this stuff a little too late. Didn't get a chance to call him and talk about it, and basically say I thought everything was marvelous.
I believe it's the
13.
413. Good April.
Judy's been waiting so long. Her
Yeah, I
hair turned
thought
purple.
so.
I'm going for the big one. Thank you. Okay.
Man, you want to put the
Give it a shot.
Okay, just want to read from.
Yes, I will read, this is on status permits and enforcement. We have an enforcement order on 413 Weathersfield Street, map 19, parcel 8, lot 1, Amanda Bellis. You're walking like I do.
Uh-oh. You didn't get attacked by one of the trees you're...
No, I don't know what I did. It was sore last week and then it just went today.
Well, at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Frank.
Okay, let's see. So, we had a site visit. This is Kyle Van Amberg. And we did a visit to the site. So we met out on the site, and this is where Weathersfield Street makes its 90-degree bend, right directly across from the Dodge Reservation, where Smith Lane comes out and connects into Weathersfield Street, and also where Taylor Lane with the OSRD project going on over there. And actually, it was kind of good that Mr. Hunter applied to us too, because that gave me, I captured a little bit of his knowledge, and we came up to the front and started talking about some of the drainage issues to help me understand what's going on. But so some clearing occurred, and the issued enforcement order had a recommendation for Mr. Amberg to contact a wetlands professional, and I still think that's a good idea, because we definitely have got bordering vegetated wetlands, which comes from Mr. Hunter's property, is also over here and comes up to this frontage. But so what I've kind of found out in studying the lay of land and certainly working with Kyle is there is a culvert that goes underneath Weathersfield Street and comes over here and discharges and outlets. And it may not be where my ruler is, because I'm not exactly sure exactly where their joint boundary line. We couldn't find any type of marker or anything. But it flows both ways when it comes out. It goes into a very shallow kind of ditch that sort of goes towards Mr. Hunter's driveway, and then parts of it go over here. And where they came in and laid their swamp mats down and went in and did some clearing here, there actually was a shallow swale there, maybe that depth. And it captured mostly roadway drainage, but some of the overflow possibly from that culvert. And it was intended, as near as we can tell, to go down to an area. Now, this tree line is kind of deceptive here. There's really a clump in this area that has some disturbance in the topography, and there's some kind of basin. There's a depression within the clumps of hardwoods, and it turns out this shallow swale goes into an area where it takes this sort of little jog and it goes away from the roadway, where you'd think the roadway ditch would normally stay within the town's right-of-way. It diverts and it goes into there, and it appears that it ended at this depression, which that depression wasn't draining that, and it may have been a personally constructed basin. And it also appears that there is a subsurface pipe, 4-inch.
I think it might have been 6.
4 or 6 inch, but thin wall slotted, that black flexible ADS pipe. I'm used to, when I was in distribution, that's what we called it, 6-inch ADS, but it's thin walled, it's not very thick. It outlets just before his driveway. So it appears that it may have been installed by the previous owner, and he thinks that it may have connected up to this basin, that it may have been a mechanism to take water collected in that basin, get it down to just before his driveway, where then it would go into the culvert underneath his driveway. But that may have been done to let quote-unquote the front lawn be mostly lawn and not actually have a swale or anything going down through it. And this is back off of the town's right-of-way, so it's on his property. So my discussions and recommendations, now having made the site visit, are, if the commission would be amenable to it, is number one, still get the area flagged, so we can figure out whether we're all dealing with BVW or not. But within the context of, I really think there existed a swale through there, and now where those mats went across, that's been leveled. And so it only has the ability now to sheet flow down across his lawn and basically just go right down here and start making that more wet. I would think if the commission would allow it, that we reestablish where that swale goes, and also allow Kyle to do whatever investigating he needs to do to see about reestablishing, so he's got subsurface flow from that quote-unquote, that rough basin.
If it was the town's right-of-way swale, wouldn't it?
But see, it's
Wouldn't
not.
it be up to them to?
But it's not.
But it's
It
all-
goes
it's all
onto
the
your-
runoff from the culvert that's being dumped onto my property. How could it?
Well, the rain falls out of the sky and
Well, it doesn't.
right.
It's being drained onto my property through a culvert.
Right.
And then it's just my problem to deal
But
with.
but you went and you changed the topography.
Well, the topography is being changed by the fact that that water has nowhere to go. So it's.
But you didn't help it, because where you put those
Well,
swamp mats down and graded across there.
It's not flat there, there's still a swell, and I also was told to stop. I wasn't done, I wanted to clear that corner, and then I was gonna put a new pipe in. Because the town already came and said that it's all up to me. How can, if the town had the right of way on the side of the road like you were saying, and then it diverted, can't that be continued on the town right away?
Well, I didn't say that I had any proof where the town right-of-way was. In fact, I specifically said that I was unable to find any marker or anything that establishes where that boundary of the private property is. So I don't know whether there's a 3-foot right-of-way off of the pavement there, or if there's a 10-foot right-of-way off.
How long have you been there?
This is my 4th year.
I can't think of any major changes on that corner that would have changed that pipe, that could have wrecked the pipe, or...
Well, again, the pipe is definitely on his property. The pipe, there's no way that pipe is in the right
No,
of way.
you're talking the small one.
The one that goes to this depression that he was working in his front yard.
Yeah. That
That's
sounds
what the
like
town
not a town, because the town,
Yeah, they
that
said
I
it
work with,
wasn't.
they don't use
I
that.
had the town come out and he
Yeah.
said it wasn't his.
And I have no definitive proof one way or the other that shallow grass swale that I saw in this area here, that it's either within the right of way or on his property. But it had more definition as a swale prior to the work, because you can look at the undisturbed areas on either side of where the recent disturbance has been, and you can see more of a little hump. Where his grading and clearing occurred, it now has much more ability just to sheet flow and go directly down into his yard, which, from all my discussions with you, that's counterproductive to what you hope to accomplish, which was to not have.
Yes, I wanted
that drainage go
that
across your
swale I
property.
wanted I was actually going to try to put another pipe to even help it. I just,
Can we let him put another pipe in there? You have a pipe
Well,
underneath the
but-
driveway?
But you're using the phraseology,
That one
ano-
works.
that one's only.
you're using the phraseology another pipe, and there was no pipe. I can see no evidence.
We're
that
saying
there was
would it be
any pipe
okay
up
to
there.
just say, let's put a pipe in there?
Well, the question is, where would it go? Because again, right now,
To that basin?
he's got some kind of basin that isn't discharging or draining, that is clearly on his property, within his private property, and that's not functioning. That's
That's
what I was told.
That's higher ground too, and that area is
Right.
It's flooding the whole back of my yard.
What was your plan to clean out that pipe?
I wanted to clean out, even the swale, because even the swale was filled with there's trash in there. I mean, I pulled out a lot of crap that was in there. I wanted to clean
That whole ditch on the opposite side of the road for you, heading back towards Kurt's house, it's gotta be redug. I used to mow that every year, and it hasn't been done in several years.
No, but again, the section where we're talking about, across
Right
from
across the
his
street,
property,
yeah.
does have a functioning, and clearly on the Dodge Reservation side, there's a very well-defined gully, whatever, drainage ditch, whatever you want to call it, that goes into the culvert, and the culvert going across the road is in very good shape and is functioning.
Where is the culvert relative to that map?
I don't know, I would have to
It's not even on,
correlate it.
it's a little further up from where the turn is.
Up meaning,
Up on Mr. Hunter's
Up
property,
Weathersfield.
goes underneath Weathersfield?
yes.
Yeah, if that's the base of the culverts, more like up here, and then coming around, then there's just piles of big rock here with a swale, and then right around here is where it cuts back in, and then it's,
So,
It's dug out.
before being by here, was your plan to try to put a pipe where there was no pipe, and then fix the pipe that is going
Going
under
around,
your
yes.
driveway? So your plan was to,
no, not under my driveway.
you weren't,
The one under my driveway is fine.
but the one that leads from that
The
basin
one that
to your
goes to the
driveway?
basement, yeah, it's about like 100 feet. that
So you were
goes-
planning on fixing it?
Well, yeah, that's the whole, without that, my yard's,
Yeah, a mess.
it's,
So getting back, I think what you were saying is, what would we ever, you're saying put a swale in there to get to that basin, but you could,
I'm saying there's evidence
that there was a swale.
of a grass swale, and I don't know whether that was all bordering vegetated wetlands or not, but there was a grass swale through there, and where the swamp matting went down, and then the clearing commenced, the side berm, the down gradient berm into the side closest to his property has basically been obliterated, so there is no swale. It was very gradual, but there's no swale. The continuity has been interrupted by the disappearance of the berm that normally contained it.
Would we be, but do we have the right to even talk about saying, hey,
Well, see, I
heck
don't-
with the swale, put a piece, put a
I
pipe.
don't know if that's his property or if it's the
That's
town
it.
property, because I do not know what the width of the
Gotcha.
right-of-way is in that area.
Kurt, where was the staging spot for that bridge?
It wasn't on that side.
It was on the other side?
Yeah, it was on
Yeah, it would've had to have been on the other side, 'cause
Fox
that's where you
Hollow
came
side.
in, yeah.
But if he was building a swale, rebuilding that swale, that could still be on town property.
It could be, which is why I proposed for it just being put back the way it was, and
I
then
got you.
let
Thank you.
him,
Okay, that's
and
where
then
you're
let him do what he wants to in the
The rest of
interior of
it.
his property. Either way, there's more than a reasonable doubt that this was bordering vegetated wetlands that was disturbed up here and clear. And I still think, the commission's normal modus operandi is to figure out what the nature and extent is of the regulated areas, and then you can figure out what to do or not to do. There's a substantial amount of area that the vegetation has been cleared in there. I don't know whether all of that is BVW or whether a part of it was the buffer zone. Any way you want to look at it, our 25-foot no cut, no disturbance area got disturbed, as well as BVW. So again, the commission's normal strategy is to seek to get that area restored, even if it's just kind of let it go back and naturally seed and grow itself. I'm just saying that Mr. Van Amberg's issue with water entering on his property has been compromised by the fact that now that swale doesn't have a defined trough going across there. Yes, it's very gradual, it's nothing dramatic, but it was there for some kind of reason, because I'm no expert, but I know in this town that people don't usually do swales unless there was some kind of reason for it.
Right.
Even if it was only 6 inches deep, it was there because there was some kind of runoff.
Perhaps you should go and have a consultant to market, and then come back with a plan on if I ran a pipe through here, over there, and went underneath the good pipe under my driveway, it would fix it, and we could either yay or nay.
Well, right, but I mean, and again, that's why the recommendation has always been to get a wetland scientist in there, figure out what we've got for resource areas, and then
I've contacted 213, I just, I haven't.
Yep.
Okay.
And I told him that I'd be willing to come here and advocate to you folks
Yep,
on recreation of a swale across there.
yeah.
And then have this discussion and you folks, figure out the rest of this stuff. But yeah, we can certainly, we can write a directive and allow him on his property to reestablish drainage from that basin and stuff.
Yeah, because there's no need for.
I'm just, in the area that I don't know how
Yeah.
much of it is right of way and how much of it isn't, I'm just saying, recreate that area, let it revegetate, and
Right, and then
Because
the
there is-
other area
there is
that
evidence.
he would attempt to fix will be
Yeah.
where he's having the problem.
yeah, I mean, the good news is that where that culvert goes underneath the road and discharges,
Yeah,
its preferred float path is to go to Larry Hunt's driveway
yeah,
and go underneath it and then go on the abutter to Mr. Hunt, where it follows the abutter's property back down towards Mr. Hunter's house, where it then enters that culvert that we were
I'm
just
familiar
looking
with
at.
that one,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so most of the roadway runoff that actually gets captured and comes from the Dodge Reservation side goes towards Mr. Hunter's property and then his neighbors. The swale, the grass swale that's on this side actually doesn't have a defined channel that connects right to the outlet of that culvert pipe.
Who's the butter on the other side of Larry Hunter?
I don't know, I'd have to look
yeah,
at
you
the
know?
big fence there.
I'm not sure.
Cliff Pierce is either the next one or the one
No,
after.
no, it's
Two
It's,
over.
there's a gentleman between Mr. Hunter and Mr. Pierce.
Right, okay, well, anyway, let me throw something else into this. This huge development that's gonna take place about where you're sitting and I'm sitting,
Right,
Fox Hollow, is that what it's called?
yeah, right now, yep.
I have heard some informal discussion to the effect that among some of the people in town that what will make sense for all of this because of traffic patterns and the amount of construction that's going to go in there is to square that corner off and make
Make it like a three-way stop, or at least a two-way stop. anyway.
And if that's the case, that's either going to add to that corner on your side, I would think, or take something away.
Actually, it's gonna take it away.
Well, it depends.
It's gonna
If you
move, it's
square it
gonna
off-
move away. If they square, where it makes an arc now, if they square it off, that means that pavement is actually gonna be moved away from this area in order for the travel corridor to be more 90 degree. It's
Well, he'll
actually-
pick up land though.
Yes.
It's not a question of picking up land, it's a question that it will provide more room for the drainage to be addressed
And a better drainage
in that
system.
area.
So should he wait? to see
Well,
what's
again,
going on?
we've got a violation on his property.
Yeah.
My proposal is to deal with the stuff on his property, as well as, like I said, just put an earthen berm where that swale used to go across there, so he isn't getting any more sheet flow runoff going down that disturbed area. I'm not looking for him to start building roadway drainage or anything there.
The town will do that. But I think your proposal makes
Based
sense.
on what Kurt said, you might be better to do the immediate flagging with a wetland consultant, have him look at it now so he can be thinking, and then when the town, if and when the town goes back to do such a project, you can tell them, all right, but you're gonna do it correctly.
Yeah, I've done-
Well, now that we're involved,
Yeah.
I intend to provide input,
Yeah,
because, again, we don't want anybody suffering from incorrectly managed roadway runoff. So now that we know about this situation, but again, it's hard for me to advocate for somebody with a violation on their property if they don't take steps
Yeah.
to resolve that violation so that, because this is exactly when you don't want something to come up and somebody pointing the finger at you and saying, oh yeah, we saw when he went in there or whatever, and how come now you're talking about, you know, there's no sense, you know,
All right, we'll do this
if we can
stage.
keep his situation and get it resolved
Right.
before we start dealing with the re-engineering of that intersection. But again, the re-engineering of that intersection is going to present a lot better opportunity to deal with that roadway drainage and to have it appropriately kept off from going into his property.
All right.
I've just learned from past experience, it's just not good to get into, you know, to digress when you can just focus on what
Yeah,
the issue
yeah,
is.
definitely.
You
And like I
know,
said, I have
as well as
I have
get you
contacted
pulled
from
into something.
the list that you gave me.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything back from, I think it was DeRosa and Mary Grimmer.
Oh,
They're
good.
both good.
Yep.
I contacted through email just because I can't use my phone during the day, but I'm obviously gonna be off work for the rest of the week at least, so I'll have time to make phone calls.
All right.
And we're
yeah.
looking for a letter from you too,
I
or did you?
wasn't, was it this just for me to sign? I wasn't really,
Either send an email or whatever, just saying, you know, I intend to comply with the issued enforcement order. Yep,
just say I intend
Yep.
to comply. Okay,
Yep.
I wasn't really.
yep.
I'll get
All
that.
right.
We live and die by written paperwork, and so
I
again.
wasn't sure if it was just a
again-
matter of signing this and it didn't seem to
No,
make sense.
no, it's just you making
Just saying that
a
I'll
statement and signing it that you intend to comply. I mean, we have other people that ignore us and go on different paths and aren't constructively engaged with us, so this is just establishing that, yes, if anybody asks us what's going on with it, we can say, yep, we're working with them, here it is, right in the
I'll
file.
get that right in.
All right, so we can plan on hearing from you in a very short future, and you will keep us posted.
And hopefully hearing from a
Right.
wetlands consultant about
And
his
we'll
issues.
start everything going in the right direction. Good, excellent.
And
we don't need to-
you're amenable for
Yeah.
us proceeding with hopefully being able to take some steps to try and deal,
Great.
okay.
I'm gonna try to get out there and take, I went out there the last time you came up, because I had to look at a bridge out there, and, but I do plan on, I'm gonna go out there, try to, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Should be good.
It's very subtle. Again, you look, you get right into the grass there and stuff and look, and it's very subtle, but you can see
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Okay, good.
All right, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you for your time. Hope
Thank
you
you.
feel better.
Yeah.
Now, this next one is gonna be nice and easy. Bradley Jamison.
Yes.
Enforcement order, 100 Havel Street, map 15, parcel lot 92, Bradley Jamison. Return to compliance.
So on the face of it, it sounds great, but actually what happened was Mr. Jameson did sell his property. Unfortunately, the new owners who contacted me about another issue had absolutely no idea about the enforcement matter. And so I took as many steps as I could reasonably take with them to satisfy the requirements of the enforcement order. And specifically, the commission had stated that they wanted to see a plot plan that had the structures on it. So there was as I thought, when you do a mortgage, there is a plot plan done that at least gives you a representation of the different structures that are on the property. So we didn't get that. What didn't happen, though, is there was supposed to be an affidavit. Remember, we've got a clause in all of our orders of conditions that basically states that if the order of conditions is still open and hasn't been closed, the buyer needs to communicate to the seller that there's this order of conditions and there's this plan, it's got wetland resource areas on it, and there might be restricted, no cut, no disturbance areas. It's basically to make sure that when a property changes hands and the order hasn't been closed out, that the new buyer knows there's a permit, knows that there's a plan, knows there's regulated wetland resource areas on the property. So that hadn't happened. So I hope you don't mind, but I invited the new owners in. It's Robert M. Mall and Calissa C.B. Mall. I invited them in and I sent them that condition in our directive, which basically all they had to do was take out, paste onto a piece of letterhead or whatever, come in, and I told them that since I'm a notary, I told them, you come in with your driver's licenses and sign in front of me, I'll notarize it. So we have the notarized affidavit from them that they know that there's regulated wetland resource areas on the property and therefore to come to the commission. And we also put a thing in there about no dumping of yard waste, since that was one of the issues, that the forested wetlands had become a repository for yard waste and stuff. So I'm recommending, if the commission so choose, that you direct me to send a letter stating that the enforcement order has been resolved, that I've conducted a site visit and things are up to snuff, and I will copy it to the new owners and send Mr. Jameson
So
to the
moved.
copy house.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, in dicey situations like this, it would make sense for the commission to record their order of conditions, and that would put the proper buyer on notice.
Well, but there wasn't an order of condition. But yes, we have done that in the past, but in this particular instance, there wasn't an issued order, because this came to us through the discovery of a violation, and we issued an enforcement order with directed to get things cleaned up.
We record that.
I don't,
Something to think about.
yeah, well, yeah, we have, I think we've had at least one case where we did record an enforcement order. But yeah, again, the parties were constructively engaged and not, so that would have just been giving the registry $75 that they really don't deserve, I think. And I'm sorry, Howard,
Yeah.
you made the motion and Bob seconded it. Thank you very much. And thank you for directing me to write that letter. I like to close these things out. Okay, I guess we can return to the Dodge Reservation.
Which is the conservation restriction at Dawes Reservation at 390 Weathersfield Street, map 18, parcel lot 7, Essex County Greenbelt Association, Town Road.
So you have in front of you, you should have memorandum with attachments from Judy Pickett, Town Council. And we seem to have gotten into an unfortunate situation. Now, I'm going to use that phraseology, but actually it's a very distressing situation. So briefly, ever since 2015, when we first started negotiating with Greenbelt for a conservation restriction on the Dodge Reservation, one of the things that the town council and I have both effectively stated is that in the category of assignability, if for whatever reason Greenbelt as a qualified environmental nonprofit, either something happens with them, they become not financially viable as an organization, or they just decide that monitoring and taking care of this enforcement order is not within their capabilities anymore, and they wish to see it transferred to somebody else. That's the assignment business. Assign it to somebody else. the town has always stated and always made it a policy that they would have a say in that assignment. That they would look at who it was being assigned to and have to say, have a right of either approving it or disproving it. Say yes or no. We don't want that group to hold this CR, or we do want them to, it's fine with us. We thought we had this all settled and figured out. Then, and we sent a communication back in roughly September to Vanessa Johnson. We sent a communication about having that language in there that the town would, I'll read it. Any assignment will comply with Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Mass, if applicable, and must secure prior written approval of the grantor. The town is the grantor. Prior to the assignment, at least 60 days prior to the proposed assignment. Now, that language got massaged a little bit. But anyway, prior written approval from the town. We've always insisted upon that. We intended for it always to be within the CR document. So back in September, a few things came to us. We edited the document. We sent a communication to Vanessa Johnson explicitly detailing what things we wanted to see changed. I polled and surveyed all of you folks about that version of the document, the CR, and everyone was fine with it. Town council was fine with it with some recommendations, and we sent that in. That got sent to EEA, and EEA apparently had some back and forth with Vanessa sometime in October. We were never copied. We were never informed. Some edits and some changes were made to the CR, and it was submitted back to EEA without the town being informed and without us having any ability to get involved in it. In the course of that editing or whatever, the phrase, "which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld" as a qualifier, got attached to that statement about us granting written prior approval to the assignment. Then EEA, thinking that the CR was okay with both parties, issued a letter mid-October approving local signatures after their legal department went over the document. Middle of October. November 26th, I was on the phone about the conservation restriction on the Sullivan property, and I was talking to Mr. Goya at EEA, and I just happened to ask him, I said, I haven't heard anything, can you tell me what the status is of the Dodge Reservation CR? He goes, oh, you don't know? We issued the letter approving local signatures, like on October, anyway, almost 3 weeks before I asked about it, and we were never copied. That information was never submitted to us. And so, upon finding this out, and I had asked Vanessa Johnson the past week, I had asked her where this stood and didn't get any reply. I didn't get copied on anything. So two issues have developed here. And again, town council's memo is much better in laying out the chronology and discussing this.
You refer to Vanessa Johnson, she's referred to here as Vanessa Hall, is that her maiden name?
Yeah, Hall Johnson.
Hall Johnson, okay.
but two issues developed here. The first issue is that the document was edited and submitted to EEA and not copied to us, so that we knew that edits and changes had been made. That was,
So what local signatures are on that?
well, no local signatures, but they issue an approval. They say, okay, the state is now absolutely fine with this document, and the state assumes that because it's been submitted to them and told that the two parties involved are in agreement on this, the state thought that everything was fine. Editing and changing to the CR occurred, and we were not copied, and then EEA was led to believe that both parties were, Greenbelt and the town, were okay. EEA did their review and had a few minor changes and sent it back with that local approval letter, which happened 3 weeks ago, and we weren't copied on that, so we didn't know about that either. So there's a major trust issue that has occurred here. And in the court, so we were sent on Monday. I found out about this. Tuesday we got copied on all these different versions, including a clean version, supposedly ready for signatures. And so I requested of the EEA the version that their legal department had looked at, so we could see what comments they had made, and then we looked at what edits Ms. Johnson, Greenbelt had made, and we discovered that Greenbelt had made these edits that we were never copied on. And this particular edit is particularly troublesome and concerning to town council and to our town administrator also, because there's no legal standard for what's unreasonable. You can basically just stand in the middle of the room and say, to your mind, that's unreasonable. Like, that tray with 3 chocolate cookies and 3 sugar cookies is unreasonable. And so town council tries to express that through this memo, but
Can that be removed?
So they want that
Well,
last
yeah.
little piece struck out. Which
Right,
approval shall
right.
not be
yeah,
unreasonable.
which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld.
Because that basically opens it up to, they can
Right.
go ahead and do this.
But the
Well,
But the problem
Thank you.
here at this point in time, so I had a conversation with Debbie Egan, and I also had a conversation before coming to the meeting tonight with town council after this memo got finalized today, and that is that this is real problematic in dealing with Ms. Johnson as a representative of Greenbelt. And it was suggested to me that if the commission would so direct, that I should contact the director of Greenbelt and basically say that this situation occurred, which has eroded our trust, and we don't believe is a professional way of engagement, and that for all intents and purposes, the town's position, again, if the commission will support this, is that qualifying unreasonable language needs to be deleted there, and that's the bottom line position, that the town paid $2.5 million for the Dodge Reservation, and the town, as the grantor, should have full say as to who they end up dealing with as the other holder of this CR, because they're going to do the monitoring, they're going to assist in enforcement, or even carry out enforcement if they feel the town is violating the CR. And either way, it has to be a professional, above-the-board relationship.
do we understand why the edits occurred without us knowing?
No, we do not.
So
And-
my only
We
concern
don't,
with going to somebody else ahead of time, rather than, why not just go to Vanessa and say, Vanessa, help us out here? I'm a big believer in seek to understand before you're understood. I would rather want to know before I go the next level up and just potentially continue to explode the situation, what happened.
But the problem with that is, and I have had that same self-analysis too.
Yeah.
The problem is we're dealing with two things here. We're dealing with edits that were made without our knowledge and that we were never informed of.
Why?
I don't know. But again,
Well-
and secondly, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah, that's
this was
strange.
approved by EEA, and we weren't informed of that.
Once again, why?
So in essence, what you're saying is that we should write the director of Greenbelt and say, Vanessa Johnson screwed up, and we're about to leave because of that. Because that's the
Not
way
in
that
so
I
many words,
read
but
what,
that's what you're saying.
that's what
That's
I
what you're
read
saying.
that as saying.
I agree.
Now,
You're saying.
I mean, first of all, I'll make the point that that phrase that we're discussing about accepting the transfer of
Which shall not be unreasonably
responsibility.
withheld.
That phrase is a phrase that's commonly used in business contracts. Commonly. And basically what it's saying is that, well, if you disagree with what if the parties disagree, that's up to the judge to decide in the end.
Would have to be.
Let me throw another.
And that, well,
And
so.
I'm just saying that it would not be beyond my belief that anyone inserting that phrase would insert it as a matter of standard procedure. And that I grant you, it shouldn't have been done without our approval. But the cause of it being put in there isn't necessarily an intentional affront to the town.
Except for the fact that in the editing and stuff that was going on here, the whole thing was taken out and then put back in. The whole thing about the grantor approval within 60 days,
I agree
which
with
shall
you.
not be unreasonably held.
Yeah.
At one point, Vanessa removed that with absolutely no explanation. As we followed the track versions, and then secondarily,
I think she may not have been.
secondarily, town council attests to in here, we went back to the template that used to be provided by the state. They would give you a Word document template of what the CR should contain as a model.
Yeah.
And the assignment language was in there, but not this, which shall not be unreasonably withheld, wasn't in there. We then went to Mass Audubon's, holds the Bradstreet Farm CR. We went to that, which the example is in here. It does not have that language. It does specify written approval of the grantor, i.e. the town. So I understand your point, and I had Debbie, my assistant, carefully go through every single email that our office received from September up to this date to verify that there was no communication from Greenbelt or Vanessa within the time period, because you can look at the track documents and you can see the exact dates when those changes were made, and there were no emails or communications to us when those changes were made, and then submitted to EEA.
All I'm saying is this. Number one, I find it very interesting that I more or less had put that in my agreement with the people in New York State about my land up there, and it was my lawyer that struck it out. but he came back to me and he told me why and so on.
Yeah.
So it,
I just
But
think it's
my
part of our
point
due
is-
diligence to find out why
Yeah.
we've been
Let-
left out
let me
before
throw-
we make an action.
Let me throw another fact under the thing here, and this has just occurred to me as I've been listening to this, although I've been familiar with reading this stuff. I basically agree with Sam that this is language that you typically see in documents, and I also agree with town council, and research has been done that apparently it isn't done for town-owned stuff, and I'm comfortable with that, and I think that's the way we ought to wind up. But I think we need to be very careful about how we go about this, and I think the fact that it isn't being taken into account here is the head of Greenbelt, Becker, is no longer the head of Greenbelt, and they have a new head. And that new head came from outside the Greenbelt organization. It's a woman, I don't remember her
Yeah,
name.
sorry.
Kate,
Yeah.
Kate.
And she and/or new council may have imposed these language on here, may have nothing to do with Vanessa, except that she's following orders. So I don't think we need to
Throw her
do
under the
anything that
bus.
appears to throw her under the bus, because she's always dealt with us over the last several years, as far as I can see, responsibly on this, and also the farm purchase situation. So I think that we ought to contact Greenbelt at whatever level and say that, town council has not found this acceptable, and that we want a further change in it, and we aren't going to sign off until that happens, without mentioning it.
Well, I'm afraid I've got to restate that that is just an absolute major breach in protocol and collaboration.
But we don't
to-
know where it's
to-
coming from.
but we don't.
I agree with Kurt.
But it doesn't matter where it's coming from.
Does-
It's the
right.
point that we weren't notified, and we weren't notified of the
We
changes.
can mention that.
We weren't given the copy,
Don't
and
need-
then we weren't copied on the communication from the state.
Well, was that the state's fault, or was that Greenbelt's fault?
No, it was apparently Greenbelt's fault.
Well, it seems to
Because
be the state-
Greenbelt was engaged in a back and forth discussion and changing and doing some of this editing.
Don't equate those two things.
Oh, I have
We
the
don't.
email chain from Mr. Goya at the state
You have the
level,
email,
showing that Vanessa
showing-
was in contact with him and not copying us.
I mean,
you
I'm
can't-
still a believer. Why not go to Vanessa? Vanessa, help me out here. Why
Yeah.
were we not informed? Why weren't we kept in? What was going on that we were left out of this?
But you contacted Vanessa,
No,
right?
he
I
hasn't.
No,
contact-
he
Yes,
hasn't.
I did.
Not on this matter.
Not on this specific.
Beforehand.
That's in on this matter. though.
Beforehand, but not on this matter.
Right.
You have to contact her on this matter.
Yeah.
Okay, but I
sincerely feel-
can't do that until I was specifically told I could not do anything until you folks saw this memo and discussed it in deliberations at a public meeting.
Fine.
And
Well,
then
that's-
I'm to follow your,
Yeah,
your
direction.
your direction
Yeah, I
and
get it.
guidance
Sure.
on
yeah,
this.
agreed.
But I'm telling you, though, that I was involved in negotiations on the Brad Street Farm conservation restriction, and we had almost the same type of quote-unquote breach of protocol occur with that. Because at one point, we were negotiating the Brad Street CR with the state, and we dropped it. Specifically because of things like this, of the document being changed without our knowledge and going against our wishes. In 2015, December of 2015, we were talking to Dave Santamana about this assignability and this assignability language. It has not been a secret for the last 2 years that the town wanted prior written approval for assignability. So to then have it edited out of the document without our knowledge, and then when it gets put back in, this language which town council finds unacceptable being included with it, and us not being informed of it. I mean, that's what I'm trying to tell you about. It's like trying to have negotiations with somebody that changes the rules and stuff and doesn't let you know that the rules have changed.
And
And
what
it's a breach
we're
of
trying to tell you
professionalism.
is that we understand what you're saying. And if that was the intent, then we fully agree with you. but we do not see absolute evidence that that was the intent. I can easily see that that could have been, well, we're in public, so it could have been someone messing up.
Okay.
Exactly.
So.
And I'm
if you
concerned
direct-
about
if you
that
want me
because
to
we
share this
have-
memo from town council with Vanessa Johnson and proceed from there, I'll follow your guidance and direction.
Is that what you want?
It was-
Well, I'm
It
thinking,
was
I mean,
suggested to me that I contact.
see, I agree with Sam. You know, I'm always gonna, my tendency is to give somebody the benefit of the doubt on the front end, is that maybe there could have been a million things. Were you trying to get it done quickly?
Number one, if there was a change in staffing or power at that place, they could have people come in with new rules.
There have been two changes.
And no experience.
Number one,
Yes.
Vanessa took over the job from the other fellow, and number two, there's, and I didn't know about this, is the change of the head of the, now, the change of the head actually worries me. Okay.
Well, that's why we want this wording like we want
Oh,
it.
well, I'm,
Wording has to be.
believe me, I've tried to state from the beginning, I want the wording correct.
Right.
I don't want this.
All right, I
It's
don't
a
care
question
whose
of
head's
what
on a platter, but yeah, I just want the wording done correctly. And we'll be tongue-in-cheek from now on and watch how people cross their Ts and dot their Is, and not just say, well, Vanessa's helped us with a dozen things before.
Again, and just so you know, it has taken like a day and a half of my time and town council's time to go back,
Just understand. if
to
we
go
missed-
back and try and figure out what changes got made, whether they had ramifications, the extent and nature of them. So there was a lot, and again, it's,
We should
it's
not be
it's
dealing
water-
with people that
it's
we
water
have to
under the
double
bridge,
check.
but the
Yeah.
problem is when you, it's like playing tennis.
Yeah.
If you don't volley and serve to the other person that you're playing with, you can't expect them to be engaged in the game either.
Right.
Well, I'd be
And-
very
and
interested to see
to
what the
be
answer would be
able
as
to
the
return it.
Vanessa, why were we not informed
But
If
it's
of
not-
any edits? Why?
Again, it's
Yes.
not our, it actually is not our responsibility to make Vanessa justify
Right.
whatever she did, especially if the situation.
No, I'm not
is-
trying to, I'm just trying to understand what happened. It seems like a major ball was dropped. How could we not be informed of any edits?
Well, more or less what Sam is kind of insinuating, that maybe we ought to start watching these people a little closer.
I mean, we have to, but step
Well,
one is
actually,
what
To
happened.
town
I'm
council's point,
saying
though, you know,
that
the
Brent
director of Greenbelt can
and
answer that same
Judy
question.
Pickett are watching them very well.
Right, yes, they are. But we don't want to
And
deal
I'm
with
just
people that
saying-
we have to keep watching.
I'm just saying that I think we should take it a step to figure out what happened before we get really upset.
Yeah.
Because Greenbelt is important to us.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, we
We
kind
are
of
to
view
them.
them as a partner.
So did we
right?
answer your question? What do you want the letter? I mean,
Well,
the feeling of the board is we want this
I believe what
done
you're telling me
correctly
is that
as we
I should
ask.
send this memo from town council to Vanessa Johnson
Yeah.
and request
Answers.
some type
Clarification.
of
Clarification.
Clarification, I guess that's a good word.
Well, as well as the fact that that language needs to be removed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
that's the
that-
main point.
It's a showstopper.
That
Yeah,
the
I don't-
conservation,
I don't see
the
any reason
Conservation
why-
Commission is not gonna sign the CR if that,
Right.
which this shall not be unreasonably withheld, qualifier, as advised by town council,
I
that
don't
needs to
see-
be removed.
I don't see any reason why you should be precluded from also contacting the director. You want to contact Vanessa directly in the.
Yeah, because I think when they go
And
over,
CC her
I think when
boss.
they,
I
I
think
think when they
that's
go
fine.
over this memo from town council, they're gonna understand just exactly what our concern is, because it's very evident there that,
You can do it two-step, Dan. You do your thing to Vanessa,
Yeah.
see what the response is. If we feel the response is not correct, adequate, then you,
that means I gotta come back to you. I would,
Yeah,
I was advised by the town administrator, again, to let let the director of Greenbelt also know about this situation. The best
Well, I
way
think
for me-
everybody should be copied.
Best way for me to do that is, is to release this memo to both of them.
Yeah.
As well as Mr. Goya down at EA too.
Yes.
In fact,
I don't have a, I don't have a
They
problem
may not have done that
with
for us.
CC.
right.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, that's, in fact,
Do we
that's
need
the
a
way I would
motion?
do- I would do
No.
No,
CC.
you've
No,
got to
this is
understand.
administrative.
You just
You've
keep us,
directed me.
keep us on the
The
CC.
two has been asked as CC to the others.
Yeah.
A couple of things that,
So now-
an additional perspective going through my mind is,
Okay.
number one,
Yeah,
if
of course.
Greenbelt needs to assign this kind of thing, the chances are it's gonna be to the trustees of reservations or to Audubon, so. And both of those are things that would be acceptable to the town, under general circumstances, although there may be qualifications involved in that, but, and, you know, the town is not going to unreasonably withhold its permission for this. I mean, the clause is unnecessary, but.
Exactly.
anyway.
But it's not the way
So
we
Green-
wanted it.
I don't
right?
think Greenbelt has to be concerned about that, and I don't think we have to be particularly concerned over the problem, but the language is there to protect us in case they want to
Right.
And they should
assign
keep,
it to a
when
profit.
we're in the loop, they should keep us in the loop
I'm-
and say that we, by the way, we've
Right.
done changes or whatever.
That is so strange.
Give it to
Why
them.
they wouldn't have kept us? That is, based on all our experience with that organization, it's always been,
Right.
in my brief history, it's been very upfront, everything's
Right.
been clear.
But again, it's extremely problematic that the written approval of the grantor was struck from the document
Of course.
when we've been
Of course.
insisting from it from day one. So,
And someone threw it in the mail to the state and didn't get it approved.
Well, actually, it's more problematic that they got the document approved
Yeah, yeah.
with changes that we had.
That I can't understand. I thought
No,
that they
I
couldn't
think
approve
that-
until they had the
Yeah.
final signatures.
Like I said,
The
they,
good news is it's approved,
E-
the bad news is it's approved.
EEA, since they knew it was a collaborative process going on, they thought the
They
process
assumed
was
it was-
collaborative all the way through. They
Yeah.
didn't realize that all of a sudden one party stopped sending the copies and stuff to the other party. They wouldn't know that. So,
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And there's plenty more cookies here.
I thought this-